Hi, I'm Marcy Lundy, and this week we have the wonderful Selena Blackmore with us for Cult of Kindness podcast. Hi, Selena.
Hi, Marcy. So love to be back in the new year. Happy New
Yes,
Year. Happy 2025.
Happy New Year to you. Yes, so I hope that you had a nice holiday season.
Very much. Yeah, it was beautiful. Very stayed at home with the family, all the kids, lots of presents, too many
Oh,
presents, definitely. But the kids had a great time. So yeah, it was very nice. It was good. Very
oh,
good.
good.
But no snow, unfortunately. We did get even though people always think because I'm based in Switzerland, but
Mhm.
we didn't have we didn't have a white Christmas this Christmas. So
Oh, well, I'm sure it was still special nonetheless.
absolutely,
Oh, good,
absolutely.
good. Well, for the month of February, I thought that it'd be wonderful as we continue our heart to heart conversation. And this season is about the empath. The book of the month for February is The Empathy Effect by Helen Riess, MD. And Selena, I think you know a little bit about empathy. So I thought it'd be wonderful to just get some of your insight about what Miss Reese is writing about. One of the things she touched on was empathy in healthcare, which you would think is a given. As we were talking about before we started, she has a list and just showing people you do have the ability to learn empathy instead of being dismissive. What do you think about one empathy in healthcare? It's like, why? That's kind of a no-brainer, but okay.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? So I love that how Helen describes that empathy is in theory a skill and that everyone can learn to be empathetic. I think it's true that there are some people that are more natural empaths, and maybe some that struggle maybe to kind of connect with their empathic side. But I think with everything, all these kind of emotions, we all have these skills in us. Some are just tucked away a little bit more, and some are you know, more open out into the world. So I think it's also great to kind of understand that you can connect in with that, right? It's something you can learn, it's something you can in practice, it's something you can get better at. And some of myself coming from a 20-year corporate career, I know that often it was sort of, being too empathetic was sometimes almost frowned upon a little bit about, then it was kind of seen as being a bit too emotional and, you can't make everyone happy. And a little bit of that sense of, too much empathy or being too empathic wasn't necessarily seen as always a positive. And I do definitely think the good news is that that is now changing, and you're seeing more and more leaders as well as leadership programs, and what companies are looking for are one of the key skills alongside being vulnerable and humble is also empathy, because as a leader, um, I don't think you can be a good leader and lead a team, regardless of where you're working, if you don't have some form of empathy, right? Because you need to kind of understand where are the people at, what's going on in their life. We often forget, people aren't just coming into the work, right? They've got a story behind them, they've got lives behind them. People might be struggling with all kind of things in the background, relationships, health, family issues, kids, divorce, moving house, etc. So I always try to approach it, if someone's being a little bit off with me or a little bit, on edge, I would try and be like, okay, well, I don't know what's going on in that person's life outside of this situation. And, maybe I can try and create a space that person can share, and kind of connecting with that person. And I think a lot of it for me is also about, as I mentioned, that holding space and creating space so people feel safe to share something, to maybe talk about something. And that's for me like one of the huge reasons why empathy is so important, because empathy is also about creating deepening relationship and creating a space that people can maybe share what's going on, so you can then also better understand where they're at, maybe give them some guidance or just listen. And you touched about in healthcare as well, and I mean I worked in large pharma for 20 20 years, not quite healthcare, but kind of on the front end.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, you said we think it's a no-brainer. But I think
Mhm.
again, in these big enterprises, at the end of the day, healthcare, hospitals, all this, their enterprise, their business at the end of the day, there's so much pressure, timelines, everyone's so busy, everyone's so stressed that things like what often people they certainly used to call these soft skills like empathy and listening skills and, kind of paying attention to what's going on, they would just be
Mhm.
brushed to one side because people are like, oh, I'm too busy, I don't have time for this. The end result was that you often ended up maybe losing your really good people, or people being miserable, or people even burning out because they weren't being seen, they weren't being protected, they weren't being taken care of. So for me, I think empathy is a core skill for everyone, but particularly also in professional environments. And it's like, for a leader, you have to learn to be empathetic on some level, even if it's not your natural skill, it has to be in there.
It's true. Yeah, I think, just the art of envisioning yourself in that space, even if you have no idea what they're going through, it's like just step outside of yourself. That's a
Mhm.
great start.
Absolutely.
We're not all walking in the same shoes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She talks about the positive effects on a patient outcome. And, the patient doesn't want to feel like a number. And in life, your coworkers, or if you're a supervisor, they don't want to just feel like, oh, a staff member. Yes, they are a staff member, but they want to know that you see them, and how do you think that people can really, because it is a process if you aren't tapped in, but how do you think the naysayer can start? Because there's always going to be someone who says, nope, I can't tap in. So how do you think that they should try to find a starting point?
You can't tap into empathy. Yeah. Good one, that. So I think it can be broken down. You can be empathetic in different ways. And I think you said it beautifully about, people don't want to be a number, they want to be seen as the whole person. I've always recommended people, if they struggled with this, just have more conversations, right? Have more talk to people, get to know your people. People would ask me, what I would consider made me a good leader or makes me enjoy leadership. It was always, I wanted to get to know my people. I wanted to understand where they were, what their lives were, did they have kids, what were their kids doing? And when you show interest in someone, but genuine interest, not kind of like the fake, oh yeah, how are you doing, but generally show interest. And showing interest is, asking questions, keeping on top of things, remembering maybe when someone had an important event going on in their life, asking them about it, checking in, and also sharing. So we mirror language, right? We mirror body language. We also mirror how people behave. So if you're finding it hard to maybe be empathetic, or you're finding it hard for someone to maybe open up, try and like step out of your comfort zone and share something from you. Maybe share something a little bit vulnerable, share something that's going on in your life. And I always found that the more I did that, the more people would naturally share with me. So for me, it's a lot about empathy, is getting to know the people around you, understanding their story, understanding what's going on in their lives, because that really helps you to then tap into where they're at, and really helps, particularly when you're working in teams, for the team to pull together. And I had beautiful examples of this in the past, when we had someone in the team who was having a family member who was very sick, and it was very challenging for that person, and they had to take some time off to take care. And the whole team really stepped up and kind of took over some of that role and really made that person feel like it's okay, you go take time off, we're going to pull together as a team and cover your job. And even though this person was a very private person, didn't really like talking about what was going on in their life, um, for them it was a really big lesson to see that if they actually shared something, even though it was hard, it helped the others to have more empathy with them. And it also helped them because they pulled together and rallied together to help them out. And I think everyone seeing that and experiencing that just shows the power of empathy, shows the power of sharing, of creating space to share. So it's a lot about also you taking maybe the first step, you sharing something that's maybe personal, something's going on in your life, and others will then follow suit as well.
Absolutely. It's not uncommon for a place of business to hold a retreat. And I think that one that would specifically focus on getting to know one another in a comfortable space, because, it's natural not to always get along perfectly with everyone you work with. But if you create an environment where you start to hear your other coworkers share and you say, I didn't know that about you. Or I didn't realize you were going through that. And it all turns around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. The power of, and it's fascinating that, isn't it? Because that's one of the reasons companies do all these like off-site team buildings or
Mm.
retreats, because the magic often happens when you get the people like outside of the office or outside of the hospital environment and doing something together that's really away from work, and you see people in a very different light, or that, as you said, you'll discover someone maybe has a talent or a skill. We used to often do this as an icebreaker when I did team meetings. It was like because I think like I don't know what it's called in the US, but in Britain, there's like a Britain's Got Talent or Germany's Got
Oh,
Talent, and there's like the talent show. So we do like something similar, like everyone would have to share what's their secret talent, right? And then you'd have to guess which person was it that had that secret talent. I think it was like a great icebreaker. And it was
okay.
nice because everyone has a talent, right? Whether it's, cooking or an instrument, or I don't know, someone could do, do handstands, whatever it was. People always have a hidden talent. And sometimes
Sure.
it's very surprising. And again, it's a great way to get people to connect and then also understand a little bit maybe the history, what they did at high school, where they came from. Maybe someone was an athlete and they can still, yeah, there was one person, remember, they could do like cartwheels still because she used to do gymnastics. And you hear all these stories, and that's exactly the power of connection of people in often an outside the working environment is really what molds those teams. And
Yes.
then when you have that, you're automatically going to get more empathy across those people moving forward as well. It's that creating that, almost I say, that kind of campfire um moment. If we think back, as human beings, we've always been drawn around a campfire and share stories. We're storytellers. Human beings are natural storytellers. And
Sure.
I think with everyday life and the pace and social media and WhatsApp and whatever else, we're still telling stories through Insta and TikTok and whatever, but it's very quick, it's very fast, it's very visual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that emotional connection doesn't come quite across so much as the old-fashioned kind of let's huddle around a fire and share a story. But we have
Yeah.
that innate longing in us to share stories and hear stories. It's in our DNA, right? It's in us. And it's shifting how we're doing it. But if you think about the whole purpose around social media, it's still storytelling. We're telling stories through about
Yes.
us, but just through images or videos. It's just a little bit too fast, maybe, for everyone to be able to connect and get that empathetic or that empathy moment that you would get if you're actually face to face and talking.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because in the book, one of the things she talks about is technology being used as a way to build empathy or connect. And I mean, you're right. Maybe for different generations, like older generations, it may take a minute to understand, but it is a tool that no one would have really thought would be there that can help. And how do you think that people, whether it is through talking to a therapist via text, or just simply creating a page on Instagram or another form of social media where you create a community for people to feel open about something you're going through? How do you think that people should try that out for those that are curious about it?
I'm definitely not a social media expert. I'm probably a little bit too old for that, I have to say. I'm also someone who's still finding my feet with Insta. I do have an Insta channel. I'm not on TikTok, and I'm
Yeah.
kind of dabbling in YouTube. So I'm probably not the best person to ask. I think from what I see and experience, I think it's a bit of a double-sided sword, right? I think what I love to see and the stories that I like to follow are the ones that are very real, when people show themselves vulnerably and real, or sharing a message, or maybe sharing a challenge. And again, it goes back to that being vulnerable, sharing something that's maybe scary, sharing a story to inspire others that may be in a similar situation, to help give them, courage, and say, oh, if they did it, maybe I can do it. People can relate to. A lot of times people feel very alone when they're struggling, when they're suffering, and being able to connect with someone, seeing that someone else understands them, can really help also in feeling not so alone, can really help in also being able to heal and maybe reach out to someone for help. The challenge I see a little bit with the social media side and the WhatsApp communication, and I talk a lot about this with my friends, because we all have children, and I have quite a wide range from 5, 11, and 16, and you can already see the teenagers. My 16-year-old, when they come together, if we have family parties, they just all sit on the sofa on their phones, right? They don't talk to each other, and all the communication kind of goes through a device. But they don't see how the emotional reaction in someone's face, they don't really see that so much anymore. And you see that a lot in the social media with all the, the commenting, right? So all the people, when they do the nasty commenting, like the trolling, as they call it. I always say, like, would you do that to someone? Would you say those same words if you were saying it to their face and could see the reaction, right? See the person being hurt or angry or upset. It's much easier if you're writing something nasty and not seeing a reaction, and then you might not even be having your real name. So it's very, you're not getting any consequence, you're not getting any reaction, you're not getting an emotional reaction that's maybe saying, I shouldn't be doing this, or just maybe I should feel bad about doing this, because it's very anonymous. You're in an anonymous space and you're doing it basically out into something without seeing the reaction immediately. And I think that's a little dangerous. I do sometimes wonder whether the kind of generations coming in might struggle a little bit with how then actually to manage emotions and reactions in, let's say, the real world without a screen, because they're so used to communicating with, I guess, emoji reactions, but not real face reactions. And then even thinking about a lot of people that now work completely online, right, through screens like this, and there's more and more of this. Again, people know it's a phenomenon that people don't show up the same way on a screen, right? And if they do in an office environment, if you're going to go to the water cooler or grabbing a coffee, I mean, there was always the old joke, if you want to get the gossip, what's going on, you go to the water cooler, you grab coffee on that floor, and then you know what you get, you understand what's really going on, why maybe a project, why is something not working, what's up with this person. And when people are on a screen, again, they're more reserved. You're not going to show so much emotion. Typically, you might not ask or say the same things as you would if you were in a face-to-face environment. And I actually think, due to my work, it has also a lot to do with energy, right? So you can send and give energy online. It's absolutely doable. I mean, I do some of the work I do is online. But I do think you also need to kind of understand how to do that, and you need to practice it. And I think people just, if you're in close contact with someone physically, you are automatically in each other's like energy fields. You're going to feel that person. You're going to understand, does that person making me feel good, on edge? Do I feel relaxed? Is that person making me feel I can maybe share something that's bothering me, that's upset? It's hard to get that through a screen. So I think there is a challenge that people maybe not be sharing things that are difficult, are struggling, because they're not getting that sense of someone being able to hold that space for them and get them to feel relaxed so they can open up. And again, showing empathy through a screen, again, definitely can be done, but I think you need to be more aware of it, more focused, because typically, again, you only see this part, right? You don't see the whole body language. People tend to be, again, you're sat in a chair, you're not moving around. So you just get a different sense of a person. Body language is so important also in empathy. And I know Helen talks about that as well, like the eye contact, the body language. We as humans, sorry, that was my cat. We humans pick up so much nuances of body language, and I think we just don't get all that on just screens. So I think there we are missing a chunk. And I wonder how are we going to catch that up at some point? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like your fur baby was like, oh, just incorporate pets into the moment.
I don't know if you heard them. Yeah, it was my female cat just basically swiped my male cat because he jumped on her space and she didn't like it.
Oh, oh no.
She wasn't showing empathy. She wasn't showing empathy.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Especially if it's hard initially for you to step into a community, like you said, a screen. Most certainly, you can convey that, but uh, you do have to really be tapped in, and it is really where you really have to feel seen. You have to have a connection. Like, we're many miles apart, but I always feel connected with you, and it's just being tuned in and just completely listening. And I think that that's a big part of empathy. Just listen. It doesn't matter about the distance, but if you're listening and finding some understanding, it's good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listening, and there's these different levels of listening, right? As well. There's like you get these 3 layers of listening, like you're listening the first level, second level, third level. Um, and I think, yeah, if you open yourself up, so you're really not just listening to what are the words, but then what's going on with the body language, what are you sensing, and then what else are you sensing, like energetically what's going on, then you can really pull that person in, right? You can hold the space. For me, empathy is a lot about holding a space for a person,
It is.
to feel that they're safe, that they can talk about something or share something. Safety is a huge component in people to be able to be vulnerable. And part of helping people to feel safe is showing empathy. So it's kind of like it does a circle, and you can't have one without the other. So leaders then say, oh, my team doesn't talk to me, or they don't share things with me. My response would be, well, okay, well, that probably has something to do with you, right? So rather than pointing your finger at the other people, then, hold the mirror up and say, what can I do more of or differently that they do maybe start sharing things with me, and just saying, well, they're not doing it, or I'm not empathetic, I think is a little bit of an easy route out. And I think that one that would need to relook at, particularly from a space of working with people, right? I mean, any contact with people, you need to be open and create safe spaces and have good conversations, open conversations, to be able to work effectively together, or do something together, whatever it is, whether it's a school or a team or a working environment, it doesn't matter. A family, right? A family is the same. A family needs to listen, you have empathy with each other.
Yeah.
We have conversations about empathy quite a lot at my dinner table. My eldest son, he's 16. He announces himself as not being very empathetic. He's like, "Oh, I'm not empathetic, mom." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. It's also you're a teenager. It's kind of your hormones. I know, I get it." And I'm hoping he'll grow out of it as well. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's a known fact as well that teenagers, they have to be selfish a little bit because it's part of them moving away from the home. But we actually joke about it. We actually joke a bit because I often say, "Oh, you need to be a bit more empathetic," and he's like, "Oh, I don't have empathy, mom." It's like a topic we do talk about. And again, I think it's something, particularly with people, in schools or with kids, talking about even what is the meaning of empathy at an early age, I think is really important. What does it mean? What can it look like? And even saying to a child, when you see them showing empathy, like calling it out and saying, "Oh, that was really kind, you really," you don't have to use that word, right? You can use simpler words. You can say, you really understood your friend there, or you really connected and understood why she was sad and listened. So I think, again, it's a skill that you can teach at a young age, from kindergarten upwards, right? Kids can understand, if someone's sad, how does it make them feel? And how they can then show that they care. Like my little girl is really cute. If I ever say I'm not feeling well, she'll come up like, "Oh, mummy," and she'll touch my head. Like, "Oh, have you got a fever? And are you okay?" And I always make a big thing about saying, "Oh, it's so kind of you, and I already feel better because you're caring, and thank you for caring." And I think you can encourage them and show them, and then obviously be a role model. So from a young age, they start incorporating it into their being, because then it's going to be much easier later on. If you haven't learned that, and then all of a sudden you find yourself maybe, in a working environment, and you have to all of a sudden become empathetic, I can imagine that could be quite a bit harder.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Oh, Selena, you're so wonderful. I know I use the word wonderful a lot, but you really are.
Oh, thank you. Can only
Yeah.
give that back.
Well, yeah, the way you're able to connect and, like you said, connecting with your family and your little ones and teaching them early on, that really, it's so helpful.
Mm,
Ultimately, how people show up in the world and will have
yeah.
natural empathy.
Actually, one of the reasons I have so many pets. So I have two dogs. I have six cats now. I have two dogs and six cats. And we used to have more. We used to have chickens, but they got eaten by the fox, so we don't have chickens anymore. And it's actually one of the reasons I do have that lots of pets, because for me it was always really important for my children to grow up with animals, because I feel like animals or automatically help children to learn about, responsibility and taking care of something, and, respecting when they want to be petted and when they don't. And they learn a lot about empathy just growing up with animals as well. So I'm always a big fan, even if you can't like own your own pets, but to get kids also out into connection with animals, whether it's like maybe taking them horse riding or petting zoo or just something so they can like, get into contact with animals and taking care of animals on some level, I think really helps kids to learn about empathy as well and learn about caring at a young age.
Yeah. If you don't already, you should follow Selena on Instagram. It's always so cute to see your children interacting with your pets.
I do some posts.
Oh, well, Selena, thank you so much for your insight. Like I said, I knew that you would be able to help the audience understand and see a path along with our book of the month. So thank you so very much for your insight.
Thank you, Marcy. Again, it's such a joy, such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yes. All right, everyone. Again, the book of the month is The Empathy Effect by Helen Riess, MD. Selena, as always, thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. See you
Take care.
soon. Bye, Marcy. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye, everyone. Bye.